There are over 25,000 unique cards in Magic the Gathering, but how many of them are truly unplayable in the Commander format? Today, we're going to take a look at a card that's not great at first glance, but it's got more utility than you might think. This week's card is Overlaid Terrain. Overlaid Terrain is a green enchantment that costs 2 generic and 2 green mana. It reads, as Overlaid Terrain enters the battlefield, sacrifice all lands you control. Lands you control have tap, add 2 mana of any one color. Now, I won't lie, sacrificing all your lands is a huge downside, but doubling your mana is pretty spicy, especially at this mana value. Let's take a look at some similar cards and see how Overlaid Terrain compares. For the record, I'm not going to count cards like Bubbling Muck or High Tide. They only work for a single turn, so I see them more as rituals compared to Overlaid Terrain that's going to stick on the battlefield and benefit you turn after turn. Let's start with cards like Mana Flare and Heartbeat of Spring. While cheaper to cast, these enchantments benefit all players, not just you. Extraplanar Lens does a similar effect, but only for one specific land type, making it really only usable in monocolored decks that are running lots of basics. Although, one fun fact, you can use snow lands to make it essentially one-sided. At 4 mana, you've got cards like Cryptghast and Liliana of the Dark Realms. Cryptghast is a creature with 2 toughness, meaning it's very unlikely to survive, and only works with swamps, limiting you to decks that are heavy in black or built to abuse Urborg. Liliana actually quadruples your mana, but again, only swamps, and you have to get to 6 loyalty, which probably is not going to happen. At 4 mana, Overlaid Terrain is incredibly unique in its ability to work with any land, produce any color of mana, and double the output of all your lands. Except lands that already make 2 mana. I guess it doesn't technically double those. As you move up in mana value, you find a lot more mana doubling effects. At 5 mana, you get Mirari's Wake, which I would argue is the best version of this effect, though it is locked to Selesnya. Nissa Who Shakes the World is another good option at 5 mana, though she only doubles your forests and is a planeswalker, meaning is she going to stick around? Probably not. Gauntlet of Power is the only colorless option at 5 mana, though it is symmetrical and again limited to a single basic land type. At 6 mana, you get bombs like Mana Reflection and Cage Sun. Mana Reflection has virtually no downside and even doubles your Mana Rocks and Dorks. Cage Sun, colorless, good, but it is restricted to a single color of mana, limiting its use outside of monocolored decks. Regal Behemoth is another decent option at 6 mana, though it only works as long as you're the Monarch, and again, it's a creature, so will it be removed? Probably. At 7 mana, you get insane cards like Zendikar Resurgent that also draws you cards, or Nyxloom Ancient, which triples your mana. I could also mention Vorinclex, who not only doubles your mana production, but is a stacks piece against your opponent's lands. Brutal. So why would you ever run Overlaid Terrain over any of these other incredible options? Is the reduced mana cost really worth the downside? Probably not. Though there are a few strategies that can really take advantage of a card like this. First, any deck that's already built around sacrificing and recurring lands may be interested in this card. There are actually quite a few mass land reanimation spells in the Commander format. Lumra, Bellow of the Woods, Aftermath Analyst, Splendid Reclamation, World Shaper, Second Sunrise, Planar Birth, Gerard Hourglass Pendant, Fate's Reward, and more. These cards pair incredibly well with Overlaid Terrain. Think about it like this. Let's say you have 7 lands on the battlefield and both Overlaid Terrain and Second Sunrise in hand. You can float all 7 of your mana, cast Overlaid Terrain, sacrifice your lands, and then cast Second Sunrise, bringing all your lands back, untapped and now able to tap for 2 mana of any one color. Not only does a play like this completely negate the downside of Overlaid Terrain, but it also triggers an obscene amount of landfall, if you're into that. If you're looking for other cards that let you sacrifice all your lands, you could consider Zurin Orb, Sylvan Safekeeper, Squandered Resources, Scapeshift, Reprocess, Pitiless Carnage, Reign of Filth, and Darkheart of the Wood. Commanders like Slogurk the Overslime, the Gitrug Monster, Hazazon, Shaper of Sand, Titania, Protector of Argoth, either of the Windgrace cards, or even Thalian the Gitrug Monster, may already be running a lot of these cards, and are good examples of commanders who may be able to take advantage of Overlaid Terrain. Moving on, let's talk about decks that are already playing around catch-up ramp mechanics. Most of these cards are in white, and they only trigger when you have fewer lands than your opponents, making Overlaid Terrain's downside sting a lot less. I can't list all of the cards in this category because there's just way too many, but some of my favorites include Surveyor's Scope, Claim Jumper, Keeper of the Accord, Ward of Bones, Scholarship Sponsor, and Natural Balance. Surveyor's Scope in particular is a slam dunk with Overlaid Terrain, ramping you from 4 to 6 mana the turn it comes down, assuming you play it on curve. One last strategy that may benefit from Overlaid Terrain is decks built around phasing out, blinking, or bouncing your lands. Teferi's Protection is the best example of a card that can do this. Like the last example, you can float your mana, cast Teferi's Protection, and then cast Overlaid Terrain. Your lands can't be sacrificed because they are phased out. Of course, you may want to save Teferi's Protection for a more dire situation, but it's an option. Realm Razor, Taniwa, and Sunder are other potential options that would let you avoid the downsides of Overlaid Terrain altogether, though these cards aren't exactly going to make you a lot of friends at the table. One last thing I want to mention is utility lands. A lot of utility lands, especially the older ones, don't tap for mana on their own. Glacial Chasm, Maze of Ith, Dark Depths, just to name a few. Overlay Terrain allows these lands to tap for 2 mana on top of their other effects, which is super cool. And this includes the new Capenna fetch lands that sacrifice themselves when they enter the battlefield. These lands do not enter tapped. You can tap them for 2 mana with the sacrifice trigger on the stack, and I think that is awesome. No other mana doublers work with these utility lands, so if you have a deck built around them, you may want to take a look at Overlaid Terrain. Okay, let's get back to the original question. Is Overlaid Terrain truly unplayable? No. In fact, I give it 2 dumpsters out of 5. Yes, it's a pretty bad card, and likely won't work in most decks, but in decks that can get around that downside, I think it's absolutely worth the risk. At any rate, that's all for today. Let me know what you think of Overlaid Terrain in the comments, and feel free to leave suggestions for cards you want me to review in the future. Bye.